Well, in 68, I was 20, and 69, 21.
So the scene, that club, The Scene, Nick...
Steve Paul's.
Steve Paul's, sorry. You were shooting Floyd there. Who else played at this place?
I think Hendrix played there. I think, many other people. I didn't shoot there very often.
Okay.
It was just one of those places you would see, bands coming into town. You'd find out about who's playing where. You would then attempt to get a photo credential to be able to shoot that particular band at that venue. It was learning how to make contacts with people in the record companies, talk to their, publicity department, find out what bands are coming up. And I would, in addition to shooting live shows, I would be shooting for the record companies, doing what was called trade shots, which was if a band was in performing, and let's say they had a gold record, the label would hire me to shoot a shot of them backstage with the record company people and the band and possibly, radio personality that was promoting that show.
Well, seeing all of that, we've got a lot of venues we want to talk about, but one in particular is kind of incredible. These photos, they've been floating around a little bit, and they were around way back in the day in like Circus or something. That was probably pre-Cream magazine. But your Led Zeppelin at the Fillmore East in '69. You've got that one shot of Jimmy backstage. I don't know what the hell you're doing backstage, because it was a little tiny room, one of the biggest up and coming bands in history. They kind of made it. They did okay later on, I heard. But there they are, and you've got this picture of Jimmy sitting there looking at the liner notes of a Delaney and Bonnie record, because they opened for him. Is that what happened that night? And he's eating a hamburger because I guess catering was off.
I believe they did open for Zeppelin that night. I can't absolutely, make absolutely certain that it was, but the Fillmore East was a place I went to very often. The modern concert industry owes its existence to Bill Graham. He was the entrepreneur. He was the guy that set the standards for what you can expect to see at a show. And keep in mind, the Fillmore East was not a big venue. I don't think it was more than 3,000 seats, maybe more, maybe a little bit less. But it was an old theater that was converted for concerts as opposed to movies. And but he was the man. He was the one that treated the artists the way he felt they needed to be treated. He was the one that said we need to have the best sound that we can provide for our audience and for the artist. And then, of course, the light shows, the Joshua Light Show. And then there was, I'm trying to blank on, there was another light show that was there as well. But that was the first time I'd seen a light show of any consequence. And everything that we know today was based on what he started.
Was he the one that got you backstage at Led Zeppelin?
I'm not sure if it was him specifically. There was a guy named Kip Cohen who was his general manager. So I was friendly with him. And then, of course, you needed to, have an in either with the label, with the band, and with the theater. Because, there was always someone there as security that would prevent you from going back.
Was that the first time you ever shot Zeppelin? Well, think about the night you're there. There's that picture of Robert Plant eating cake. Jimmy's got champagne, then he's got a beer. He's eating a hamburger. He's looking at the liner notes from Delaney and Bonnie, as I mentioned earlier. And then you got Bonham sitting in the chair. We're realizing that was Bonham's 21st birthday. He was a child. You were?
Yeah, we were basically the same age.
21.
So I don't even remember that was his birthday, that's what they were celebrating.
Well, that's why Robert's eating cake.
Yeah. So without those photos, there's no way I would have recalled that was in fact what was going on there. So my guess is that this was after the show, but the possibility that it was before does exist, but typically it would be after. And those dressing rooms were pretty small. you know, they weren't luxurious like arena or you know, Coliseum size venues, and you had to be really low key, and yet in order to get the shots, you had to shoot pictures. So they weren't as adverse to them as they are today. It was a completely different world. So,
but Jim Marshall was like that. He was always used to say, I'm a fly on the wall. You don't even know I'm here. That's why he got all those wild, candid shots. And it looks like you were doing pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
That playbook.
Yes. In many instances, because of the conditions of the room and the lighting, I would revert to using a flash so that I could get some more brilliant colors, because everything was very muted, and and if I was shooting color, I'd have to do that in that instance. So it was just being at the right place at the right time, basically.
So you had the Schaefer Music Festival. We talked about the scene, the Shell at Central Park.
Yeah, the Shell was just a place where they had music various times. Not necessarily rock and roll music. It could have been orchestral. It could have been you know, a quartet for all I know. But I did shoot some artists. Jefferson Airplane comes to mind there. I don't recall exactly where in Central Park that was, but I definitely shot several different shows there. And in many instances, they were free shows, if I recall. Because I don't remember, you know, being fenced in, you know, but again, the details slipped my mind.
Oh, it was a few days ago.
It was a couple of days ago,
What about the Schaefer Music Festival?
Schaefer Music Festival was a bit more organized, a bit more set up. Now, I think that was the first time I ever shot the Allman Brothers, and the only time I ever shot Duane Allman before he died. And in fact, I have a full stage group shot of them from there, that Duane's daughter, she published a book and she asked to use that full stage shot in the book, which it is in the book. Again, you know, you got to remember that when you saw these bands at that point, they were great bands, but you didn't know that they would become the icons that they ended up becoming.
How would you?
Sorry?
How would you?
No. And like, because there was so much great music, it was just, everyone had something to say, and everyone had their own take on what was going on in the world. You have to remember, so much was going on. There was the Vietnam War, there was women's lib, there was civil rights, there were so many things going on in our society. And as divided as we were then, it's not nearly as bad as we are now.
Well, the music must have been the bond.
The music was everything. It was the progenitor for me of what my photography became, because the music is what generated the excitement for me, even more so photography-wise, because there was so much energy coming from the stage, energy coming from the audience, and being excited about capturing a moment that is like fleeting, you know, like a planet going off into the universe. It's you know, you capture a moment and you've got it. And no matter what happens to those men or women, you've got that moment on film.
Another venue, I don't know, where was the Singer Bowl?
The Singer Bowl was in Queens, New York, which is where I was born and brought up. And that, I think that was in Flushing Meadows Park.
Because you did a lot there.
I don't remember how much I did there, but you know, it was easy for me because, you know, if I lived in Queens, the Singer Bowl was in Queens. Queens being one of the 5 boroughs of New York, if you're not familiar with New York. I would go there, you know, pretty readily if there was a band playing. And I believe I shot Hendrix there once. And God, who else?
Well, you got Zeppelin. You got the Alvin Lee.
Yeah, 10 years after, and I think you told me that it was a Vanilla Fudge show. So Vanilla Fudge was like a Long Island band, and of course
they were the headliners. Supposedly.
Yeah. So that song "You Keep Me Hanging On," which was a Supreme song, was that was their first huge big hit. Because they just extended it for 3-4 times the length that the original song was being played by the Supremes. And I shot a lot of Motown acts. I shot James Brown at the Apollo Theater. It was the first time I ever shot James Brown. The Apollo Theater was in Harlem. That was, up north, the northern part of Manhattan. And
legendary.
James Brown?
That whole performance, the Apollo, James, anything like that.
He was an extraordinary performer. Had a lot of shoes in his closet.
Good man.
Because I went backstage there, and he had like a whole lineup of shoes. It's kind of like, later on it reminded me of Imelda Marcos of the Philippines. She had 3,000 pairs of shoes. He didn't have that many, but at any rate, yeah. So he would always be doing splits, and then so many people based their stage performance on what he did. Just like people, guitarists based their performance on Chuck Berry. And I shot Chuck Berry. In fact, once I had to go to Wentzville, Missouri, which is where Chuck Berry's home was. And we did an interview with him there. He was very, I don't even know how to put it, but an extraordinary guy. Rock and roll would not be rock and roll without someone like that. And so many others, Bo Diddley, Muddy Waters, all the blues masters. There'd be no rock and roll without those men. It's just crazy.